My siblings mocked my business. Now they want to be partners. Chapter 1. The Seed. The last scraps of sunlight faded through the windows of my tiny studio apartment as I hunched over the kitchen table, really just a wobbly wooden slab I'd rescued from someone's sidewalk trash. My laptop, a 5-year-old machine that struggled to keep up with my demands, cast a harsh blue glow across the scattered papers, coffee rings, and financial spreadsheets that documented the nascent existence of Green Grow Essentials. My name is Elena Vega, and at 26, I had just quit my stable job at Morris & Keene Marketing to pursue what my older siblings had universally declared a ridiculous pipe dream. Tonight marked my 3rd consecutive evening of working until midnight, fine-tuning my business plan for sustainable, ethically sourced home gardening kits, complete with biodegradable pots, organic seeds, and natural fertilizers bundled in aesthetically. Pleasing packages. My phone buzzed with a message from my older brother, Marco. Family dinner Sunday, Mom's making paella. Don't be late this time, and don't bore everyone with your plant thing again. I sighed, rubbing tired eyes. Marco, 32 and an investment banker with the crisp suits and luxury condo to prove it, had laughed openly when I first shared my business idea 6 months ago at our parents' anniversary dinner. People don't want to grow their own herbs. Elena, he had said, cutting into his steak. They want convenience. They want to click a button and have things delivered. Nobody has time to watch basil grow. My sister Lucia, 30 and already a junior partner at her law firm, had nodded in agreement. The profit margins would be abysmal even if you found customers, which you won't. Only my younger brother Daniel, 24 and trying to find his own path through a series of dead-end jobs, had shown any enthusiasm, but even his support felt hollow, like he was just trying to be kind. The skepticism of my siblings shouldn't have surprised me. We were the children of immigrants who had sacrificed everything to give us opportunities in America. Our parents, Maria and Javier Vega, had arrived from Spain with nothing but determination and their professional credentials. My father a civil engineer, my mother a nurse. They had built stable, respectable careers and expected nothing less from their children. Marco and Lucia had followed the expected path to success. I had initially seemed to be joining them when I'd landed the marketing job right out of college. But 3 years into corporate life, suffocating under fluorescent lights and drowning in meaningless advertising campaigns for products nobody needed, I'd started dreaming of something different. The idea for Green Grow had sprouted unexpectedly during a weekend visit to a farmer's market. A local gardener had been selling small herb plants in wasteful plastic containers, and as I watched people eagerly buy them, a thought blossomed. What if these plants came in packaging that was itself part of the growing system? What if everything from pot to soil was sustainable and biodegradable? What if the instructions were clear enough that even apartment dwellers with no experience could successfully grow their own food? The concept had taken root in my mind, growing stronger by the day until I couldn't ignore it any longer. 3 weeks ago, I'd handed in my resignation letter, cashed out my modest savings, and launched myself into entrepreneurship with nothing but conviction and a partially formed business plan. My siblings' reactions had been immediate and identical. I had lost my mind. "You're throwing away a perfectly good career for gardening kits?" Lucia had asked incredulously over the phone. "This economic climate is brutal for small businesses." Marco had lectured. 90% fail in the first year? And you don't even have experience. My parents had been more measured in their response, but I could sense their worry. They had worked too hard to see their daughter take what they perceived as a step backward. "Mija," my father had said gently, "perhaps you could start this as a side business first. Keep your job until you're certain." But certainty was a luxury I couldn't afford to wait for. The fire of inspiration was burning now, and I had to follow it. I closed my laptop and stretched, feeling the tension in my shoulders release slightly. Sunday's family dinner loomed like an interrogation on the horizon, but I couldn't avoid it. Family was family, even when they didn't understand your dreams. My tiny apartment, the only space I could afford after leaving my job, was a far cry from Marco's gleaming high-rise or Lucia's elegant townhouse. But in its humble confines, something precious was taking shape. I glanced at the prototype kits stacked neatly in the corner, their recycled cardboard packaging adorned with my hand-designed logo. They weren't perfect yet, but they were mine. "They'll see," I whispered to myself, a mantra I'd been repeating with increasing frequency. "When Greengrow succeeds, they'll see." I just had to make it happen before my savings ran out. Chapter 4. Torka Prickly Ground Sunday arrived with the inevitability of a tax deadline. I stood outside my parents' suburban home, balancing a bottle of wine and a small basket of fresh tomatoes I'd grown in my apartment window box. The latter was both a contribution to dinner and subtle propaganda for my business concept. Deep breaths, Elena. You're a professional businesswoman now. Act like it. The door swung open before I could knock, revealing my mother's warm smile. At 58, Maria Vega still possessed the energy and sharp eyes that had helped her navigate life as an immigrant, building a career in American healthcare. "Elena, right on time for once." She wrapped me in a hug that smelled of saffron and home. "Come in. Everyone's already here." "Those tomatoes are from my window garden," I said, handing her the basket as we walked toward the kitchen. "Completely organic." "Very nice," she nodded, but her attention had already shifted to the simmering paella. "Your father opened a special Rioja. Go say hello while I finish here." The living room tableau was precisely what I'd expected. Dad reading something on his tablet. Marco and his girlfriend Vanessa engaged in hushed conversation on the couch. Lucia typing rapidly on her phone despite it being Sunday, and Daniel sprawled in an armchair, scrolling through his own phone. "The entrepreneur has arrived," Marco announced with a smirk that contained equal parts affection and condescension. At 32, he had our father's strong jaw and our mother's calculating eyes, all wrapped in the polished veneer of someone who managed other people's millions for a living. "How's the plant business, Ellie?" Lucia asked without looking up from her phone. "Sold your first 1,000,000 units yet?" The question was delivered with the precision of the corporate litigator. She was, technically not hostile, but designed to establish unfavorable facts. "It's been 3 weeks, Luce," I said, accepting a glass of wine from my father. "I'm still in the product development stage." I settled into the remaining armchair, determined to project confidence despite the butterflies in my stomach. My father, Javier, squeezed my shoulder affectionately. At 60, his hair was more salt than pepper, but his engineer's mind remained as sharp as ever. "Tell us about your progress, mija. What have you accomplished this week?" This was the opening I needed, a chance to demonstrate that I wasn't just playing at business. I straightened my posture and adopted what I hoped was a professional tone. "I've finalized the prototype design for the starter kits. The containers are fully biodegradable. They actually enrich the soil as they break down. I've sourced organic, non-GMO seeds from small farms in the region, and I've made contact with 3 potential retail partners who seem interested." "Retail? Partners?" Marco's eyebrows shot up. "Who?" "Green Earth Co-op, Urban Roots Garden Center, and—" I hesitated, knowing the third would sound less impressive. "And the weekend farmers market downtown." The slight curl of Marco's lip told me I'd confirmed his suspicions. These weren't the high-volume outlets that would impress someone who moved money in the millions. "That's community engagement," Vanessa offered diplomatically. I'd always liked Marco's girlfriend, an art gallery director who understood creative ventures better than my brother ever would. "Exactly." I seized on her support. "Building brand recognition in the conscious consumer space before scaling up." "Speaking of scaling," Lucia interjected, finally setting down her phone, "what's your capitalization looking like? You're not running this entire operation out of your savings, are you?" The directness of the question made me flinch internally, but I maintained my composed facade. "I have runway for 6 months of operations and product development." By then, I expect to have enough sales data to approach angel investors if necessary. 6 months? Marco looked genuinely alarmed. Elena, that's nothing in business terms. You need at least 18 months of runway in this economy. Not necessarily, I countered. My overhead is minimal. I'm working from home, handling production, and fulfillment myself initially, and focusing on direct-to-consumer sales to maximize margins. Bootstrapping only works if you're selling software with no production costs, Marco dismissed with a wave of his hand. You're dealing with physical products and perishable components. The economics are completely different. Before I could respond, my father intervened with the diplomatic instincts that had served him well through decades of managing infrastructure projects with difficult stakeholders. Let's not turn Sunday dinner into a business meeting, he said. Elena has clearly done her research and has a plan. We should support her courage, even if we have concerns. His expression softened as he looked at me. Taking risks was how your mother and I built our lives here. Sometimes the most valuable education comes from trying, regardless of the outcome. I shot him a grateful smile. Though I didn't miss his careful phrasing, he wasn't predicting success, merely validating the attempt. Speaking of education, my mother called from the kitchen. Daniel, tell everyone your news. All eyes turned to my younger brother, who suddenly looked like he wanted to disappear into the upholstery. At 24, Daniel was the family wild card, bright but directionless, cycling through jobs and interests without finding his passion. It's not a big deal, he mumbled. I got accepted to that coding boot camp I mentioned, the 12-week intensive one. That's fantastic, I exclaimed, genuinely pleased. Daniel had been talking about learning to code for months. It's a solid field, Marco nodded approvingly. High demand, good compensation, smart move. Lucia's nod matched Marco's for once. Much better career prospects than your barista phase. I watched something flicker across Daniel's face, a shadow of resentment at having his choices evaluated through the family's success matrix. I recognized that shadow intimately. The important thing is that you're investing in yourself, I said, catching his eye. Learning something new that interests you. He gave me a small smile of recognition. 2 siblings swimming against the familial current, each in our own way. Dinner is ready, my mother announced. Bring your drinks to the table. As we shuffled into the dining room, I felt Marco's hand on my shoulder, holding me back slightly. Listen, Ellie, he said, his voice lower and more genuine than before. I know I've been hard on your business idea, but it's only because I don't want to see you get hurt. The market is brutal right now. I know the risks, Marco. I've done my homework. Have you really? His expression was serious. Because if you need help reviewing your business plan or financial projections, I could take a look. No judging. I promise. The offer caught me off guard. Marco the critic I could handle. Marco the concerned brother trying to help was more complicated. I appreciate that, I said carefully. Maybe after I've refined things a bit more. He nodded, seemingly satisfied with the non-committal response. As we joined the others at the table, laden with my mother's spectacular paella, I realized I was navigating a delicate balance, defending my venture's legitimacy while not closing the door on potential advice or support. The meal progressed with the comfortable rhythm of family gatherings, stories from my parents' workplaces, updates on mutual acquaintances, debates about trivial matters that somehow became heated before dissolving into laughter. No one mentioned Greengrow again, and I was grateful for the reprieve. It wasn't until dessert, my mother's flan, a recipe handed down through generations, that Lucia circled back to my situation. So where are you actually making these garden kits? She asked. Between bites. Your apartment can't possibly have the space. I'm assembling the prototypes at home, I explained. Once I go into proper production, I'll need to find a small workshop space. I've been looking at a few options. Commercial real estate in this city is highway robbery, my father commented. When I was starting out with your mother, we ran everything from our garage for the first 2 years. Elena doesn't have a garage, Marco pointed out unnecessarily. I'm aware, I replied dryly. But there are affordable maker spaces and shared workshops popping up specifically for small-scale production businesses like mine. The sharing economy has some advantages. Lucia looked skeptical. And what about shipping? Inventory management? Customer service? Returns policy? These aren't minor details, Elena. I know they're not, I said, feeling my patience wearing thin. I've built all of that into my business plan. I worked in marketing for 3 years. I understand the customer journey. Marketing and operations are entirely different animals, Marco interjected. I'm learning as I go, I admitted. But that's what entrepreneurs do. Successful entrepreneurs, Lucia corrected, usually have experience in their industry before they launch, or they have substantial capital backing them up. Or both. The criticism, however accurate, stung. I pushed my flan around the plate, appetite suddenly diminished. Sarah Blakely had no experience in fashion or manufacturing when she started. Spanx, I countered. Now she's a billionaire. Marco rolled his eyes. For every Sarah Blakely, there are 10,000 failed entrepreneurs nobody remembers. Marco, my mother warned, let your sister breathe. I'm just being realistic, Mom. The world doesn't reward idealism and hope. It rewards preparation and resources. Daniel, who had been quietly observing the exchange, suddenly spoke up. Maybe the world sucks then. All eyes turned to him in surprise. I mean, Elena's trying to do something positive for the environment, creating something with her own hands instead of just pushing papers for some corporation that doesn't care about anything except profit. Why are we beating her up instead of helping? An uncomfortable silence descended on the table. Daniel rarely confronted our older siblings so directly. We're not beating her up, Lucia said defensively. We're asking the hard questions any investor or customer would ask. Except you're not investors or customers, Daniel retorted. You're family. Maybe act like it? That's enough, my father said firmly. Daniel has a point about support, and Marco and Lucia have points about preparation. Both perspectives have value. He turned to me with gentle eyes. Elena, we want you to succeed. If there are specific ways we can help, beyond financial investment, you should tell us. The sincerity in his voice momentarily dissolved the knot of defensiveness in my chest. What did I actually need from my family besides their belief in me? I could use some legal advice on terms and conditions for the website, I admitted, glancing at Lucia. And I hesitated before turning to Marco. Maybe some guidance on how to structure my pitch for future investors. My older siblings exchanged a look of surprise at my willingness to acknowledge their expertise. I can help with the legal stuff, Lucia nodded. Send me what you've got so far. And I can review your pitch deck once it's ready, Marco added, more enthusiastic than I'd heard him sound about my business before. I can test your products, Daniel volunteered with a grin. I've killed every plant I've ever owned, so if I can keep your herbs alive, anyone can. Laughter broke the tension, and as the conversation drifted to other topics, I felt a cautious optimism. My family might not fully believe in GreenGrow yet, but perhaps they were beginning to believe in me. Later, as I helped my mother clear, the dishes? She paused to study my face. You know why they're hard on you, yes? She asked quietly. Because they think I'm making a huge mistake? She shook her head. Because they've chosen safe paths, and you're choosing courage. It's easier to question someone else's courage than to examine your own caution. She rinsed a plate thoughtfully. Your father and I didn't cross an ocean and start over in our 30s by being cautious. You think what I'm doing is right? I asked, surprised by her perspective. "I think what you're doing is yours," she replied. "The right and wrong will reveal themselves with time. But the trying, that belongs to you alone." She squeezed my hand. "Just promise you'll ask for help before things get desperate, not after." "I promise," I said, though we both knew asking for help had never been my strong suit. As I drove home that night, my family's voices echoed in my head. Their doubts and criticisms, yes, but also their tentative offers of support. 6 months of runway suddenly seemed both impossibly short and tantalizingly achievable. I had prototypes, a business plan, and now, grudgingly, family resources to draw upon. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, finalizing packaging designs, confirming seed suppliers, building the e-commerce website. But tonight, I allowed myself a moment of pure, unmarred hope. GreenGrow wasn't just my dream anymore. It was becoming real, one tiny seed at a time. And somewhere in that reality was the possibility that I might prove my siblings wrong in the most satisfying way possible by succeeding beyond even my own expectations. Chapter 3: First Shoots. The farmer's market buzzed with Saturday morning. Energy, young families pushing strollers, elderly couples selecting produce with meticulous care, and hipsters inspecting artisanal breads with studied nonchalance. I stood behind my modest table, nervously arranging and rearranging my display of GreenGrow starter kits. Today marked my first real venture into the marketplace, 6 weeks after quitting my job. My small booth, secured with the last-minute cancellation discount that had stretched my budget, was positioned between a honey vendor and a woman selling handmade soaps. The location wasn't ideal. Foot traffic tended to concentrate around the fresh produce, but it was all I could afford. "These are beautiful," said the soap maker, May, wandering over during a lull in customers. She picked up one of my herb kits, examining the packaging with professional interest. "Did you design this yourself?" "Yes," I admitted, oddly embarrassed by the praise. "I wanted everything to be both functional and aesthetic. The container is made from compressed bamboo fiber and rice hulls. It breaks down completely in soil after the growing season." "Smart," she nodded approvingly. "Customers care about packaging more than they admit. They buy with their eyes first, especially in this setting." As if summoned by her words, a young couple approached my table, the woman pointing with interest at my lavender and mint kit. "Hi there." I greeted them with what I hoped was professional enthusiasm rather than desperate eagerness. "Are you interested in growing your own herbs?" The woman picked up the kit, turning it over to read the instructions on the back. "We just moved into a condo with a small balcony. I've been wanting to grow something, but I kill everything I touch." She laughed self-deprecatingly. "That's exactly why I created these," I explained, slipping into my rehearsed pitch. "They're foolproof systems with everything you need: soil, seeds, nutrients, and simple instructions. The containers are fully biodegradable, and all components are organic and sustainably sourced." "How much?" asked her partner, who had been silently assessing the display. "The single herb kits are $24.99, and the 3-herb starter garden is $59.99, I replied, mentally holding my breath. Pricing had been one of my biggest challenges, balancing the premium quality of my products against what the market would bear. I saw the slight widening of the man's eyes at the price and hurried. To add, they make great gifts too. Many customers buy them for housewarming or birthdays. The woman was still examining the kit, clearly interested. "I like that it's all eco-friendly. Most plant containers are plastic that just ends up in landfills." "Exactly," I agreed eagerly. "These actually enrich your soil as they decompose." After a brief whispered consultation, they decided to purchase the 3-herb kit. As I carefully wrapped their selection, explaining care instructions and offering my card with the website information, I felt a surge of validation. My first real customers. People who had parted with actual money for my creation. Good job, May commented after they left. First sale is always the hardest. It gets easier. I hope so, I laughed nervously. I need about 50 more of those today to consider this a success. I didn't get 50 more sales, but by the end of the 6-hour market, I had sold 12 kits, 7 singles, and 5 3-herb gardens. The total revenue of $478.88 barely covered my booth fee and materials cost, leaving essentially nothing for my labor, but it was a start. More importantly, I had collected email addresses from 23 interested people and had genuine customer interactions to learn from. As I packed up my remaining inventory, I spotted a familiar figure approaching through the dispersing crowd. Daniel, hands shoved in his jacket pockets, sauntered up to my booth with a curious expression. "So this is where the magic happens," he said, picking up one of my unsold kits. "These actually look pretty cool, Ellie." "What are you doing here?" I asked, surprised but pleased to see my younger brother. He shrugged. "Thought I'd see how the plant business works. Mom mentioned you'd be here." He paused, glancing around at the mostly empty market. "How'd it go?" 12 sales, I reported, unable to keep the pride from my voice. Not exactly Fortune 500 numbers, but people genuinely seemed to like the concept. "That's awesome," he said, and the sincerity in his voice warmed me. "Need help carrying stuff to your car?" As we loaded boxes into my aging Honda, Daniel grew uncharacteristically thoughtful. "You know what's weird? Seeing you doing your own thing like this? I mean, you were always the responsible one with the solid career path. Now you're out here hustling at farmers markets, taking risks. It's like inspirational or whatever." I nearly dropped the box I was holding. "Inspirational? Me?" "Don't let it go to your head," he smirked. "I just mean it's cool seeing you passionate about something. You seem different than when you were at Morris & Keene." "Different how?" "I don't know. More alive? Less like you're reciting from a script someone else wrote." He slammed the trunk closed. "Want to grab coffee? I have some ideas about your website." Over cappuccinos at a nearby cafe, Daniel pulled out his laptop and showed me sketches for a website redesign he'd been working on. I was stunned by both his initiative and the quality of his work. "When did you learn to do this?" I asked, scrolling through his mock-ups. "I've been teaching myself UX design on the side," he admitted. "The coding boot camp starts next month, but I've been watching tutorials and stuff for a while. Your site is good, but basic. You need something that showcases the products better and streamlines the checkout process." His redesign was clean, intuitive, and professional, far better than the template-based site I'd cobbled together myself. "Daniel, this is amazing," I said, "but I can't afford to hire a web designer right now." He rolled his eyes. "I'm not asking for money, Elena. I'm offering to help my sister. Consider it practice for my portfolio." "You'd really do this for free?" I asked, skeptical of the sudden generosity. "Well," he grinned, "I might ask you to hook me up with some free herb kits. My apartment could use some life." "Deal," I laughed, feeling a surge of affection for my youngest sibling. Perhaps family support would come from unexpected directions. That evening, I sat at my kitchen table updating my sales spreadsheet and analyzing the day's customer interactions. The demographics had been as expected, primarily women between 25-45 with disposable income and environmental concerns. The most common questions had revolved around care difficulty and longevity of the plants. My phone pinged with a text from Lucia. "How was the market?" I hesitated before responding honestly. 12 sales. Small start, but good learning experience. Her reply came quickly. "Not bad for first attempt. When you have contract language ready for website, send it over. No rush." I stared at the message, surprised by her non-judgmental response. Perhaps The family dinner had shifted something in our dynamic. As I prepared for bed, I calculated and recalculated my runway. The farmers market would provide some revenue, but not enough to sustain the business long term. I needed to focus on getting the online store optimized and pursuing the retail partnerships I'd mentioned to my family. Green Earth Co-op had expressed genuine interest in carrying a small selection of my kits on consignment. If they sold well, they would consider a proper wholesale arrangement. Urban Roots Garden Center was more hesitant but had agreed to review samples. These retail opportunities represented my best chance at scaling beyond direct-to-consumer sales. The next morning, I woke to an email notification that made my heart skip. 3 online orders had come in overnight from market customers. It wasn't much, but it represented something precious: momentum. For the next 2 weeks, I fell into a rhythm of production, marketing, and incremental improvements. Daniel completed the website redesign, transforming my amateur effort into a professional e-commerce platform. Lucia reviewed and strengthened my terms and conditions, adding proper warranty language and return policies I hadn't considered. Even Marco had checked in once, asking pointed but helpful questions about my cost structure. The Green Earth Co-op agreed to take 10 herb kits on consignment, displayed prominently near their checkout area. Within a week, they sold 7 and requested more. Small victories accumulated. A local lifestyle blogger featured Green Grow in a Sustainable Gifts Roundup. A neighborhood newsletter included my farmers market booth in their local finds section. A preschool teacher purchased kits for her classroom and shared photos of the children planting them. By the 2-month mark, I had established a modest but growing customer base and was approaching break-even on operations, though still not paying myself a salary. My savings continued to dwindle, but slower than I had initially projected. Then came the email that would change everything. Subject: Potential Wholesale Partnership. Eco Living Online. Ms. Vega, I recently discovered your Green Grow products at Green Earth Co-op and was impressed by both the concept and execution. Eco Living Online is always seeking innovative, sustainable products to feature in our curated marketplace, and your herb kits align perfectly with our brand values. We would be interested in discussing a wholesale arrangement for our platform, which reaches over 200,000 environmentally conscious consumers monthly. Our standard terms for new vendors are enclosed, but we're open to negotiation for the right partner. Please contact me at your earliest convenience to explore this opportunity further. Best regards, Jasmine Chen, Product Acquisition Manager. Eco Living Online. I read the email 3 times, hardly daring to believe its contents. Eco Living Online was exactly the type of platform I had dreamed of partnering with, a respected marketplace for eco-friendly products with a substantial customer base. This wasn't just a retail opportunity. It was potential validation of my entire business concept. With trembling fingers, I opened the attached terms sheet and immediately felt my excitement dampened by reality. Their standard wholesale discount was 60% off retail price, which would barely cover my materials cost at current production volumes. They required vendors to handle all shipping to individual customers, maintain inventory sufficient for projected demand, and accept returns at the vendor's expense. I understood why established brands would agree to these terms. They had economies of scale and infrastructure to support such arrangements. Green Grow had neither. Yet turning down this opportunity seemed unthinkable. If I could negotiate more favorable terms and figure out how to scale production quickly, this could be the breakthrough that proved my siblings wrong and established Green Grow as more than just a hobby business. I needed advice, and I knew exactly whose expertise this situation required. Swallowing my pride, I picked up the phone and called Marco. "I need your negotiation skills," I said when he answered, skipping the usual pleasantries. "I have a potential, game-changing opportunity, but the terms would kill my margins." "Send me everything," he replied without hesitation. I'll call you back in an hour. 53 minutes later, my phone rang. This is legitimate, Marco said without preamble. Eco-living has a solid reputation and good market penetration in the sustainable goods space. But you're right. These terms would destroy you at your current scale. So what do? I asked, pacing my small apartment. I can't afford to turn this down, but I can't afford to accept it either. You negotiate, Marco stated simply. They expect it. No one accepts first offer terms. And say what exactly? I have zero leverage here. You have more than you think, he countered. Your product is unique, visually appealing, and perfectly aligned with their customer base. They reached out to you, not the other way around. That means they want what you're offering. He outlined a counter-proposal. 45% wholesale discount. Instead of 60%, minimum order quantities to help me plan production, and a shared burden on returns and shipping costs. It was still aggressive from my perspective, but potentially workable if I could increase my production efficiency. The key, Marco emphasized, is projecting confidence and having your numbers ready. Know exactly what your floor is, the absolute minimum terms you can accept without losing money, and don't go below it, no matter how tempting. What if they walk away? I asked, voicing my deepest fear. Then you weren't ready for this scale yet, he said bluntly. Better to know now than 6 months in when you're drowning in fulfillment costs and returns. After hanging up, I spent hours refining my production costs, modeling different scenarios, and drafting a response to Jasmine Chen. When I finally hit send on my counter-proposal, it was nearly midnight, and I was exhausted, but curiously exhilarated. This was real business. Not the safe, predictable world of my marketing job, but the high-wire act of entrepreneurship where decisions had immediate consequences and opportunities appeared without warning. The next morning, I threw myself into preparation. If Eco-Living accepted even a modified version of my proposal, I would need to dramatically increase production capacity. My apartment was already overflowing with inventory and supplies. I needed a proper workspace. I spent the day visiting potential workshop spaces, from depressing industrial units to overpriced maker spaces that offered more networking than actual production facilities. By the afternoon, I was discouraged and questioning whether I could feasibly scale at all. As I pulled into my parents' driveway for an impromptu visit, my phone chimed with an email notification. It was Jasmine Chen, responding to my counter-proposal. We appreciate your thoughtful response and understand the challenges of scaling a young business. While we can't accommodate all your requested modifications, we're willing to meet you partway. 50% wholesale discount, versus our standard 60%. Minimum order of 100 units initially, with 45-day payment terms. Vendor handling of returns, but with a 10% damage allowance before penalties apply. Shared shipping costs for the first 6 months of partnership. If these terms work for you, we would like to launch with your 3 most popular kits in our spring renewal collection, going live in 3 weeks. Please confirm your interest and ability to meet this timeline at your earliest convenience. 3 weeks, 100 units. Minimum. Terms that were challenging but not impossible. I sat in my car, staring at my phone, torn between elation and terror. This was happening too fast. I wasn't ready. I didn't have the space, the systems, the inventory, or frankly the confidence to fulfill an order of this magnitude in such a short time frame. But if not now, when? Opportunities like this rarely presented themselves to fledgling businesses. I entered my parents' house in a daze, finding my father in his workshop in the garage, the same space where he had maintained his engineering projects over the decades. He looked up from the birdhouse he was constructing, immediately registering my expression. "What's happened?" he asked, setting down his tools. I wordlessly handed him my phone with the email displayed. He read it carefully, his expression thoughtful. "This is significant," he said finally. Are you going to accept? I don't know if I can, I admitted. I don't have the production capacity, especially not in 3 weeks. I'm still making everything by hand in my apartment. He surveyed his workshop, spacious, well-organized, with tools and workbenches that had served his projects for years. What if you had this space? What? I blinked in surprise. The garage, he clarified. It's underutilized now that I'm semi-retired. You could set up your production here temporarily while you grow into something more permanent. Dad, I couldn't. You could, he interrupted gently. And you should. It's what family does. He picked up his measuring tape, already mentally reconfiguring the space. We'll need to set up efficient stations. Material storage here, assembly there. How many square feet do you need for 100 units? As he spoke, transforming the theoretical into the practical with an engineer's precision, the impossible began to seem achievable. This was how my father had always operated, seeing obstacles as design challenges rather than roadblocks. We would need help, I said hesitantly, my mind racing with calculations. Even with the space, I can't produce 100 units alone in 3 weeks. Then we ask for help, he responded simply. Your mother has always enjoyed working with her hands, and I'm quite capable of following instructions, despite what she might tell you. His eyes twinkled with humor. This is a business, Dad. I'd need to pay you. He waved off my concern. Consider it an investment of sweat equity. When you're successful, you can buy us a nice dinner. He paused, studying me. The question is, do you want this opportunity enough to accept the help? You need to make it happen? The question hit at the core of my stubbornness, my desire to prove I could succeed on my own terms, without the safety net my siblings had always accused me of relying on. But wasn't that just another form of pride? Real entrepreneurs used every resource available. They adapted. They collaborated. Yes, I said finally. I want this, and I need help. My father smiled, a mix of pride and satisfaction. Then let's call a family meeting. Chapter 4: Unexpected Allies. The Vega Family Emergency Summit, as my mother dramatically termed it, convened in my parents' dining room that evening. I stood at the head of the table, my laptop open to a hastily created presentation, feeling like I was defending a doctoral thesis before a skeptical committee. Marco arrived first, direct from his office in a tailored suit that made my casual entrepreneurial attire seem slovenly by comparison. Lucia followed shortly after, having left a stack of depositions to review in order to make this last-minute gathering. Daniel was already there, having been summoned from upstairs where he'd been studying coding tutorials. This better be important, Lucia said, checking her watch. I have a brief due tomorrow. It is, my father assured her, bringing in a tray of coffee. Elena has news that affects all of us. I took a deep breath and launched into my explanation, detailing the eco-living opportunity, the terms I'd negotiated, with Marco's help, which I acknowledged, and the looming 3-week deadline. The bottom line, I concluded, is that this could be Greengrow's breakout moment, but I can't do it alone. Dad has offered the garage as a temporary production space, but I need more than that. I need help. The word felt strange in my mouth, almost foreign. I'd spent so long trying to prove my independence that asking for assistance seemed like admitting failure. Silence fell over the table as my siblings exchanged glances. What kind of help exactly? Marco asked, his expression unreadable. Production. Assistance. Marketing support. Maybe some logistics expertise. I gestured to my rudimentary production plan on screen. I need to create, package, and prep for shipping 100 units in less than 3 weeks, while maintaining quality control and continuing regular operations. And you're willing to pay for this help? Lucia asked, ever the pragmatist. I can't, I admitted bluntly. Not until the eco-living payment comes through. The most I could offer is future consideration or equity, but honestly, I'm just asking for family support. I'll find a way to repay everyone when I can." My mother, who had been quietly observing, spoke up. "When your father and I first arrived in this country, we had nothing but each other and the kindness of the few connections we had. We learned that sometimes you must accept help to get where you're going." She looked pointedly at my siblings. "And that helping others is not charity. It's community." An uncomfortable silence followed. I could almost see the conflict playing across my siblings' faces, their reflexive skepticism about my business, battling with familial obligation. Daniel was the first to break. "I'm in," he shrugged. "My boot camp doesn't start for another 2 weeks anyway. I can help with assembly or whatever." "I could review your fulfillment process," Marco said slowly. "Make sure your logistics are optimized. Probably save you some costly mistakes." His tone was businesslike, but I detected a hint of genuine interest beneath it. All eyes turned to Lucia, who was tapping her manicured nails on the table in thought. "I'm not much use in an assembly line," she said finally. "But I could draft your vendor agreement with Eco Living, make sure you're protected legally, and maybe help with some of the administrative systems, inventory tracking, order processing, that sort of thing." She looked at me directly. "You do have systems in place, right?" "I have spreadsheets?" I offered weakly. She closed her eyes briefly, as if praying for patience. "Right. Systems it is, then." Just like that, Operation Greengrow Scaling was born. My father immediately began, sketching workspace layouts, while my mother started a list of supplies needed. Marco pulled out his phone to order professional shipping materials at his corporate discount. Lucia created a shared digital workspace for project management, and Daniel began inventorying my current stock. I stood in the midst of this sudden whirlwind of activity, a strange mix of emotions churning inside me. Relief at the support, certainly. Gratitude for my family's willingness to help. But also a nagging sense of something else. Failure? Dependency? The very thing my siblings had predicted. That my business would need rescuing? No, I realized as I watched them divide tasks with surprisingly little conflict. This wasn't a rescue mission. This was a collaboration. The difference was subtle, but profound. I cleared my throat, drawing everyone's attention. "I need to say something," I began awkwardly. "This means a lot. More than I can express right now. But I need you all to understand that Greengrow is still my company. I value your help and expertise enormously, but final decisions rest with me." "Naturally," my father nodded, but Marco and Lucia exchanged a quick glance that suggested they might have opinions about that stance. "We're just the labor boss," Daniel grinned, giving me a mock salute. "You're still the brains of the operation." The next morning, transformation began in earnest. My father and I cleared half the garage, creating dedicated stations for each stage of the production process. Marco arrived with industrial shelving units he'd borrowed from his office storage. Lucia set up a small administrative area with a laptop and printer. By midday, my mother and Daniel had transferred all my existing inventory and supplies from my apartment. "This is actually impressive," Marco admitted, surveying the organized workspace. "You've thought this through more thoroughly than I expected." "Thanks for the vote of confidence," I replied dryly, but secretly pleased by his acknowledgement. "I mean it, Elena. You've created a legitimate product with real market potential." He picked up one of my herb kits, examining it with new eyes. "The packaging is excellent, premium feel without being wasteful. The instructions are clear. The concept is on trend without being gimmicky." He set it down carefully. "I might have been hasty in my initial assessment." "You might have been," I agreed, allowing a small smile. "But some of your concerns were valid. I've learned a lot in 2 months." "Well, you're about to learn a lot more," he said, his consultant persona emerging. Scaling production isn't just about making more units. It's about standardization, efficiency, quality control, supply chain management. And this is why I asked for help, I interrupted gently. I know what I don't know. He nodded, seemingly satisfied by this acknowledgement of his expertise. Let's start by timing how long each stage of production takes. Then we can identify bottlenecks and optimize the workflow. By the end of the first day, we had established baseline metrics for each production step and identified the most time-consuming processes. My father had already begun designing simple jigs and tools to speed up the assembly. My mother and Daniel had mastered the basic production steps and were training to work interchangeably across stations. Lucia arrived in the evening, having taken a rare early departure from her firm. She surveyed our progress with approval before setting up her laptop. I need you to walk me through every step of your current order processing and fulfillment, she instructed, from the moment an order comes in until it leaves your hands. As I explained my admittedly rudimentary systems, she asked increasingly detailed questions that revealed gaps I hadn't even considered. How did I track inventory of component parts? What happened if a customer claimed non-delivery? How was I managing customer data for marketing purposes? We need to implement proper systems before the eco-living orders start flowing, she declared. You're about to scale significantly, and spreadsheets won't cut it anymore. Over the next few days, a rhythm emerged. My parents and Daniel handled daytime production, steadily building inventory toward our goal. I split my time between production, supplier coordination, and marketing, while continuing to fill existing orders. Marco stopped by each evening after work to review progress and refine processes. Lucia worked remotely on systems and legal documentation, sending regular updates and questions. By the end of the first week, we had produced 37 units. Impressive. Progress, but not quite on pace for our 100-unit goal. We need to accelerate, Marco noted during our evening debrief. At current rates, we'll be about 20 units short at the 3-week mark. The bottleneck is the seed packaging, my father identified. It's too precise for faster work by hand. What if we had more hands? I suggested. I could ask May from the farmer's market if she knows anyone looking for temporary work. Or, Daniel interjected, I could ask some friends from my last barista job. A couple of them are between gigs and could use some quick cash. We can't afford to pay market rates right now, I reminded him. What about product instead of cash? My mother suggested. Young people appreciate these sustainable products. Perhaps a combination of modest payment and product? It was a creative solution that fit our constraints. Daniel reached out to his network, and by the next day, we had 2 additional workers, Zoe, an art student with meticulous attention to detail, and Jason, a former co-worker of Daniel's with surprising manual dexterity. With the expanded team, production accelerated. By the end of the second week, we had completed 68 units and had materials prepped for the remaining 32. Lucia's systems were implemented, tracking everything from component inventory to order status. Marco had negotiated better terms with our packaging supplier based on our increased volume. The garage had transformed into a legitimate small-scale manufacturing operation. Visitors might have mistaken it for a long-established family business rather than a desperate, last-minute scaling effort. One evening, as we were cleaning up after a particularly productive day, I found myself alone with Marco. He had removed his suit jacket and rolled up his sleeves hours ago, helping with the final assembly stage when one of our temporary workers had to leave early. Thank you, I said quietly. I know this isn't how investment bankers usually spend their evenings. He flexed his fingers, unaccustomed to the manual labor. It's actually been interesting, seeing something tangible come together. He glanced around the workspace. In my job, everything is abstract. Numbers, projections, risk assessments. Nothing you can hold in your hand at the end of the day. Do you miss that? tangibility? He considered the question with unexpected seriousness. Sometimes. Dad always had us helping in the garage or garden when we were kids. There was satisfaction in that I don't always find in shuffling other people's money around. He quickly added, "Don't tell anyone at the firm," I said. "That," I mimicked, locking my lips. "Your secret yearning for honest work is safe with me." He rolled his eyes but smiled. "This is honest work," he conceded, gesturing to the green grow operation. "Hard and uncertain, but honest." "High praise from my biggest critic," I teased. "I wasn't criticizing the concept," he clarified, suddenly serious. "I was worried about you. There's a difference." He busied himself organizing tools, avoiding eye contact. "Starting a business is brutal. The statistics aren't encouraging. I didn't want to see you hurt." "And now?" I asked, curious about his revised assessment. "Now I think," he paused, choosing his words carefully, "that you might be stubborn enough to beat the odds." Coming from Marco, this was tantamount to a glowing endorsement. I felt a ridiculous surge of pride at having earned even this grudging approval from my most demanding sibling. "Speaking of beating odds," he continued, "we should discuss your next steps after this eco-living fulfillment. If their platform performs as expected, you'll need to scale further. That means capital investment, possibly outside partners." "Let's get through these 3 weeks first," I deflected. The thought of external investment and the loss of control it might entail made me uneasy. "Fair enough," he nodded. "But start thinking about it. Success creates its own challenges." As the final week began, we hit our stride. The production line hummed with efficiency, each team member now expert in their assigned tasks. My father's simple tools and jigs had nearly doubled our output speed for certain processes. Even Lucia had rolled up her sleeves to help with packaging. During an evening push, with 2 days to spare, we completed the 100th unit. The entire team gathered around as I affixed the final label, then broke into spontaneous applause. My mother brought out a bottle of champagne she'd been saving, and we toasted our collective achievement. "To Green Grow," my father proposed, raising his glass, "and to Elena, who had the courage to pursue her vision. And to the Vega family," I added, surprising myself with the emotion in my voice, "who came through when it mattered most." As we celebrated, I observed my siblings with new appreciation. Marco, normally so buttoned up, was laughing at something Daniel said, his guard completely down. Lucia had kicked off her heels and was sitting cross-legged on a stool, her customary intensity softened by the satisfaction of a completed project. This was what success really looked like, I realized. Not just meeting a business goal, but bringing people together in meaningful collaboration. For the first time, I felt like a real entrepreneur, not just someone playing at business. The next morning, while preparing the shipment for Eco-Living, I received an unexpected email from Jasmine Chen. "Elena, our marketing team is finalizing the spring renewal collection and would like to feature a brief vendor spotlight on Green Grow. Could you provide a 100-word company story and a photo of your team workspace for our Meet the Maker section? Your order remains on schedule for our April 1st launch. Best. Jasmine." I stared at the request, momentarily frozen. A photo of my team, my workspace. The implication being that Eco-Living, and by extension their customers, expected the charming story of an artisanal maker, not a temporary family assembly line in my parents' garage. But wasn't that exactly what we were? A family coming together to build something meaningful? Perhaps not the polished narrative of a design studio, but authentic in its own way. I grabbed my camera and gathered everyone in the garage that evening. Against the backdrop of our makeshift production line, with finished Green Grow kits stacked neatly on shelves, the Vega family posed for what would become our first official company photo. "Should we look serious and businesslike?" Lucia asked, straightening her blouse. Just look like yourselves, I instructed, setting the timer and rushing to join them. That's who built this. The resulting image captured everything I couldn't have articulated about the past 3 weeks. My father's quiet pride, my mother's nurturing presence, Marco's reluctant investment, Lucia's meticulous contributions, Daniel's enthusiastic support, and my own nervous but determined leadership. I sent it to Jasmine along with a carefully crafted company story that acknowledged the family effort while maintaining GreenGrow's professional image. Within hours, she responded with approval and a request for an additional 50 units, if we could manage it, due to strong pre-launch interest. 50 more? Daniel groaned when I shared the news. My hands are still cramping from the first. 100. It's a good problem to have, Marco pointed out. Demand exceeding expectations. Can we do it? My father asked practically. Do we have enough materials? I checked our inventory lists, now meticulously maintained in Lucia's systems. We'd need to rush order more bamboo containers, but everything else we have or can get, quickly. Timing would be tight, though. Then we'd better get started, my mother said simply, already moving toward her workstation. The others followed her lead without debate, resuming their positions in our now well-oiled production process. As I watched them, a realization struck me with unexpected force. My siblings and parents weren't just helping me anymore. They had become invested in GreenGrow's success. It was still my company, my vision, but they now had skin in the game too, both emotionally and in terms of effort invested. The line between personal achievement and family enterprise was blurring in ways I hadn't anticipated, and I wasn't entirely sure how I felt about that. The additional 50 units were completed with greater efficiency than the first 100, testament to our improved processes and growing expertise. The entire order, now 150 kits, was packaged, labeled, and ready for pickup a day before the deadline. As the shipping company loaded the carefully packed boxes, a strange emptiness settled over the garage. For 3 intense weeks, this space had been the heart of our collective effort, filled with purpose and activity. Now, with our goal accomplished, an unspoken question hung in the air. What happens next? My father was the first to address it, as we gathered for a final debrief that evening. The garage space remains available to you, Elena, he said, though I suspect you'll need something larger if Eco-Living continues to order at this volume. I'm looking at small workshop spaces, I confirmed, something I can grow into without overextending financially. Smart, Marco nodded, but you should also be prepared for success. If these units sell through quickly, Eco-Living will want more, possibly at larger volumes. You need a scalable production model. I've been thinking about that, I admitted. The current hand assembly approach works for limited runs, but it's not sustainable long-term. You could outsource production, Lucia suggested. There are small manufacturing companies that specialize in this scale of operation. That would defeat the purpose, I objected. The personal craftsmanship is part of what makes GreenGrow special. I don't want to become just another mass-produced item. Then you need permanent staff, Marco countered. People you pay actual wages with proper training and commitment. With what money? I laughed humorlessly. Eco-Living's payment terms are 45 days. Even after that, the margins are tight. I can't afford employees yet. An awkward silence fell, each of us aware of the unaddressed elephant in the room. My siblings and parents had essentially been unpaid labor for the past 3 weeks. That arrangement had been bearable as a short-term emergency response, but it wasn't a business model. What if, Daniel began tentatively, what if it wasn't just your company? All eyes turned to him in surprise. What do you mean? I asked, though I suspected I knew where he was heading. What if GreenGrow became a family business? He glanced around at the others. We've already put in the work. We've built systems, processes, relationships. Why not make it official? I felt a surge of reflexive resistance. GreenGrow was my dream, my creation, my chance to prove myself independently. The thought of sharing ownership, even with family, felt like diluting that achievement. "That's not necessary," I said carefully. "You've all been incredibly generous with your time and expertise, and I'll find a way to repay that. But GreenGrow is my responsibility." "It's not about repayment, Elena," Marco said, surprising me with his support of Daniel's suggestion. "It's about sustainable growth. You've proven the concept has potential, but scaling a business requires capital and expertise that's difficult for a solo founder to manage." "Are you actually suggesting family investment?" Lucia asked, looking as surprised as I felt. "I'm suggesting we consider it," Marco replied. "Not charity, a proper business arrangement, investment in exchange for equity with clearly defined roles and expectations." My mother, who had been quietly listening, spoke up. "Perhaps this is a conversation for another day. The important thing is that Elena has achieved her immediate goal. The next steps should be considered carefully, not decided tonight when we're all tired." Her diplomatic intervention broke the tension, and the topic was set aside for the moment. But as my siblings departed, I could sense the seed had been planted. 2 days later, as I was catching up on neglected administrative tasks in my apartment, my phone rang with an unfamiliar number. "Is this Elena Vega of GreenGrow Essentials?" a woman's voice asked when I answered. "Yes, speaking," I replied, wondering if it was a vendor or a potential customer. "This is Alicia Montgomery from Urban Lifestyle magazine. We're doing a feature on sustainable home goods for our June issue, and your products caught our editor's attention in a recent visit to Green Earth Co-op. We'd love to include GreenGrow in our emerging brands spotlight." I nearly dropped the phone. Urban Lifestyle had a circulation of over 200,000 print subscribers and an even larger digital readership. The type of exposure that small businesses dreamed of but could rarely afford. "That sounds wonderful," I managed, trying to sound professionally composed rather than giddily excited. "What would you need from me?" "Product samples for photography, a brief interview, in person if you're available, and some background. On your company's origin and mission, we're particularly interested in sustainable production practices." After arranging the details with Alicia, I sat in stunned silence. Things were happening too fast. 3 months ago, I'd been a marketing associate in a cubicle, daydreaming about entrepreneurship. Now I had a wholesale partnership with a major eco-retailer and a forthcoming feature in a national magazine. And a decision to make about my family's potential involvement. I needed clarity, space to think without the well-meaning but overwhelming input of my siblings. I grabbed my laptop and headed to the small cafe where I'd done much of my initial business planning. Something about the ambient noise and anonymity helped me focus. Over a large coffee, I created a list of pros and cons for family investment. On the pro side, immediate access to capital, diverse expertise, increased production capacity, shared risk. On the con side, diluted ownership, potential for family conflict, complicated holiday dinners if things went south, and, perhaps most significantly, the loss of my independent achievement. Was that last concern pride or practicality? I wasn't sure anymore. My phone buzzed with a text from Lucia. "Free for coffee tomorrow? Want to discuss some thoughts on GreenGrow structure options. No pressure." Before I could respond, another message arrived from Marco. "Running numbers on potential investment scenarios for GreenGrow. Interesting possibilities. Lunch this week?" And then, almost comically, Daniel. "Hey boss, had some ideas for scaling production. Sketched some concepts. When can I show you?" I set the phone down, overwhelmed. When had my reluctant, skeptical siblings become so invested in my business? More importantly, what did I want from them now? The answer, I realized, wasn't as simple as yes or no to their involvement. It was about defining what kind of business GreenGrow would become and what kind of entrepreneur I wanted to be. Chapter 5: Growing Pains. I'm not saying no, I clarified, looking at the expectant faces of my siblings around the conference room table. I'm saying not yet, and not like this. We had gathered at Marco's office on a Saturday morning, using the empty investment bank as neutral territory for what promised to be a sensitive discussion. My siblings had spent the week developing a formal proposal for family investment in GreenGrow, complete with equity distribution, role definitions, and capital commitments. It was thorough, professional, and completely overwhelming. I appreciate the thought and effort you've all put into this, I continued carefully. But GreenGrow is still finding its identity. The Eco-Living Partnership hasn't even launched yet. The magazine feature is still being written. I need to see how these opportunities play out before making such a fundamental change to the business structure. Marco frowned, tapping the meticulously prepared documents. That's precisely when you need a solid foundation and adequate capitalization. Before growth, not during or after. I understand that perspective, I acknowledged. But this feels rushed. 3 weeks ago, you all thought my business was a hobby at best. Now you want to become co-owners. That's a lot to process. We were wrong, Lucia said, surprising me with her directness. Working alongside you these past weeks showed us what you've built has real potential. It's not an apology, it's a business assessment. Exactly, Daniel nodded. We're not trying to take over your dream, Elena. We want to help it grow bigger than you could manage alone. I looked at each of them, these siblings who had alternately supported and doubted me throughout my life. Their intentions seemed genuine. Their enthusiasm for GreenGrow newfound but real. Yet something held me back from accepting their offer. Here's what I propose, I said carefully. The Eco-Living launch is in 2 weeks. The magazine feature publishes in June. Let's see how GreenGrow performs with these opportunities before formalizing any family involvement. If things go well, I'll need capital and expertise for the next phase of growth, and your proposal would make sense. If not, we'll have saved ourselves a lot of complicated paperwork and potential resentment. Marco looked as if he wanted to argue further, but Lucia spoke first. That's reasonable. A probationary period of sorts. But we should establish some parameters for the interim, Marco added, ever the dealmaker. If we continue providing assistance, in various forms, how will that be accounted for in any future arrangement? Fair question, I agreed. How about this? Any significant time or resources contributed between now and a formal agreement will be logged and credited toward future equity, should we move forward with family investment. But day-to-day advice or occasional help is just family supporting each other, no strings attached. My siblings exchanged glances, a silent communication passing between them. We can work with that, Marco nodded finally. But let's set a specific reevaluation date rather than leaving it open-ended. 60 days from today, we revisit the investment proposal with updated information from the Eco-Living launch and magazine feature. Agreed, I said, feeling a weight lift from my shoulders. I hadn't realized how much pressure I'd been feeling until it eased. And thank you, all of you, for believing in GreenGrow enough to want to be part of it. That means more than you know. As we exited the office building into the bright spring morning, Daniel fell into step beside me. You know they're going to be insufferable about this for the next 60 days, he said with a smirk. Trying to prove how essential they are to your success. I laughed, feeling the tension dissipate further. Probably, but maybe that works in my favor. Definitely, he agreed. Just don't let them steamroll you, okay? GreenGrow is your vision. If they do invest, make sure they understand that. His concern touched me. When did my little brother get so wise about business dynamics? Around the same time, my big sister taught me that following your passion isn't just for dreamers, he replied with unexpected sincerity. Seeing you actually do it, take the risk, put in the work, it's changed how I think about my own future. I blinked in surprise. Really? He nodded, suddenly embarrassed by his own candor. Just don't tell Marco and Lucia I said that. They already think I'm the family flake. Your secret wisdom is safe with me, I promised, feeling a renewed kinship with my youngest sibling. Perhaps the Green Grow journey was changing all of us in ways we hadn't anticipated. The following 2 weeks passed in a blur of preparation for the Eco-Living launch. True to their word, my siblings provided assistance without pressuring me about the investment proposal. Marco reviewed my fulfillment protocols for the increased order volume we anticipated. Lucia helped refine the policies for the more complex return scenarios a national platform might generate. Daniel contributed to the website improvements needed to handle potential traffic increases. The day of the launch, I woke before dawn, too nervous to sleep. I refreshed the Eco-Living website repeatedly until, at 9 a.m. Eastern, the spring renewal collection went live with Green Grow prominently featured. My herb kits were beautifully photographed, the product descriptions compelling, and our brand story, complete with the family photo from the garage, displayed prominently in the Meet the Maker section. I sent the link to my family group chat with shaking hands. We're live! Responses flooded in immediately. Daniel: looks amazing. Those photos are professional AF. Lucia: very impressive presentation. They've positioned you well. Mom: so proud of you, Mija, telling all my friends to order. Dad: excellent work, Elena. Now we wait for the customers to discover what we already know. Marco: good placement on the page. Keep us updated on initial sales data. I spent the day alternating between refreshing the sales dashboard Eco-Living had provided and trying to focus on other necessary work. By mid-afternoon, we had sold 17 units, a respectable start, but not the immediate sellout I had secretly hoped for. 17 units so far. Is that good for first day? I texted Marco, who had the most relevant experience with retail metrics. Solid for day 1 launch with no prior brand recognition, he responded. Remember, most consumers need multiple exposures before purchasing. This is just the beginning of visibility. His perspective helped calm my jangled nerves. This was a marathon, not a sprint. Building a brand took time, consistency, and patience. By the end of the first week, we had sold 43 units through Eco-Living, nearly a third of our initial inventory. More encouragingly, we saw a 60% increase in traffic to the Green Grow website, suggesting the partnership was creating broader brand awareness even beyond direct sales. The interview for Urban Lifestyle magazine took place during this period. As well, with photographer Alicia Montgomery visiting my parents' garage, still serving as our production facility, to capture the authentic maker environment. I had briefly considered renting a more impressive space for the photo shoot, but ultimately decided authenticity was more valuable than pretense. This is perfect, Alicia said, surveying the organized chaos of our production area. Readers connect with real stories, not polished corporate facades. They want to know there are actual human hands creating the products they buy. Her words validated my instinct and reinforced something I was beginning to understand about Green Grow's appeal. In a world of mass production and anonymous corporations, the human element, the family behind the brand, was a differentiator, not a liability. As April progressed into May, the Eco-Living partnership continued to perform steadily. We weren't setting sales records, but the consistent daily orders created a reliable revenue stream that allowed me to begin paying myself a modest salary for the first time. The magazine feature was scheduled for the June issue, which would hit newsstands and digital platforms in late May. This isn't sustainable, Marco. You're going to burn out before you can enjoy your success. I sighed, knowing she was right, but seeing no alternative. What am I supposed to do? Turn down orders? Tell customers we can't fulfill their purchases? This is what we've been working toward. No, she said, swiping my laptop closed despite my protests. You're supposed to scale properly. Mama and Papa didn't build their restaurant business by doing everything themselves. They hired help when they needed it. We don't have the capital to hire staff, I argued. Every cent is going back into production costs and materials. Elena pulled out her phone and showed me a spreadsheet. I've been running the numbers. With your current margins and the volume increase, you absolutely can afford to hire help. 2 part-time production assistants would triple your output capacity. A customer service rep could manage the communication overflow. And I've already spoken to Miguel's cousin who has warehouse space near downtown that's sitting empty. He'll rent it to us at below market for 6 months if we commit to a year. I blinked at her, spoon halfway to my mouth. You've been planning all this? Someone had to. You've been too busy drowning to think about swimming lessons. She smiled, softening. Her words. The family meeting is tonight. Everyone's coming. What family meeting? The one I called yesterday. Didn't you see my text? I vaguely remembered a notification that I'd mentally filed away for later response. Elena, I can't just drop everything for a family meeting. You can't afford not to. She stood up, adjusting her blazer with the professional polish she'd developed during her business school years. 7 o'clock at Mama and Papa's. Bring your laptop and that jumbled mess you call financial projections. I've already prepared an agenda and growth strategy proposal. You did what? GreenGrow isn't just your dream anymore, Marco. It's becoming our family legacy, and Vegas don't let family legacies falter because of stubborn pride or poor planning. She headed for the door, then turned back. Oh, and take a shower before you come. You smell like potting soil and desperation. After she left, I sat in stunned silence, the pozole growing cold. Part of me wanted to be indignant at her presumption. Another part, the part that had been running on fumes and anxiety for days, felt an immense wave of relief wash over me. I wasn't alone in this. I closed my eyes, letting that realization sink in. Then I set an alarm for 6 o'clock, powered down my laptop, and headed for the shower. The family meeting changed everything. I arrived at my parents' modest but immaculate home to find not just immediate family, but an assembly that resembled a small corporate retreat. Elena had converted the dining room into a makeshift conference room, complete with a whiteboard, printed handouts, and my father's ancient projector screen pulled down from the ceiling. My brother Carlos was there with his laptop open, already running inventory calculations. My cousin Lucia, who worked in HR for a tech company, had drafted job descriptions for the positions Elena had mentioned. Uncle Raphael, who owned a small fleet of delivery trucks, was discussing logistics with my father. My mother and aunts had taken over the kitchen, preparing enough food to sustain what appeared to be strategy sessions planned to run late into the night. There he is, my father announced when I entered, clasping my shoulder with pride. El Fundador. The founder who needs help, Elena amended, handing me a thick folder labeled GreenGrow Expansion Plan, Phase 1. What unfolded over the next 4 hours was nothing short of a family-style business intervention. With Elena orchestrating, each family member presented ideas, offered resources, and committed to specific roles in what they were now calling Operation Scale Up. Carlos would oversee a revamped production system using his engineering background. Lucia would handle hiring and training temporary staff. My cousin Pedro, who had a small accounting practice, volunteered to restructure our bookkeeping and prepare for the tax implications of rapid growth. Uncle Raphael offered 2 of his trucks, and drivers for weekly deliveries to major customers at cost. My mother, listening quietly throughout most of the meeting, finally spoke up. Marco, I've been thinking about your soil problem. The formula you created, it's similar to what my father used in his garden in Oaxaca. I believe we can produce it in larger quantities if we partner with the community garden co-op I volunteer with. They have space, equipment, and people who need work. Each contribution built upon the last, creating a tapestry of solutions I couldn't have envisioned alone. As the night progressed, I found my exhaustion giving way to renewed energy, and something I hadn't felt in weeks: hope. Near midnight, Elena called for a wrap-up. "So we're agreed," she said, surveying the room. "Phase 1 begins tomorrow. Each team has their assignments. We reconvene Sunday evening to assess progress." She turned to me. "Marco, as CEO, you have final approval on all decisions, but you need to delegate and trust the process. Can you do that?" All eyes turned to me. I looked around at my family, my support system, my safety net, my team, and nodded. "Yes," I said, my voice steadier than it had been in days. "I can do that." My father raised his glass of mezcal. "To Greengrow," he toasted. "To family," I added. "To both," my mother said, "because they are becoming one and the same." We drank to that truth, and to the future we would build together. The transformation began immediately. The following morning, a small army of Vegas descended upon my garage, workspace like a well-coordinated special forces unit. Carlos measured and mapped the entire area, identifying inefficiencies in the production flow. My cousins cleared out and transported inventory to Miguel's warehouse, which Elena had somehow already secured a lease for with terms that seemed implausibly favorable. By afternoon, Uncle Raphael's trucks were making deliveries to our largest local customers, clearing the backlog that had been keeping me awake at night. My mother arrived with 3 women from her community garden, all with extensive horticultural knowledge, who set up a soil production station that tripled our daily output within hours. I found myself in the strange position of having less to do despite more happening around me. Elena had established a command center at the warehouse where she monitored operations, coordinated teams, and fielded calls. When I arrived there after checking on the soil production, she handed me a schedule. "These are your priorities for the week," she explained. "Product development, media interviews, and retailer meetings. Everything else is being handled. But the customer service emails? Lucia's niece Sophia is handling them. She's studying communications and needs internship hours. She's already responded to yesterday's backlog. The supply chain issues with Carlos negotiated with the bamboo artisan. They're bringing on 2 apprentices and increasing production. We've also found a secondary supplier as backup. The website keeps crashing when Pedro's son Marcus is rebuilding it on a more robust platform. He'll have it live by Friday." I stared at her, bewildered by the efficiency with which my overwhelming problems were being systematically dismantled. "How did you organize all this so quickly?" Elena smiled. "Marco, we've been watching you build this business from the ground up. We've seen your passion, your late nights, your sacrifices. The family has been ready to help for months. We were just waiting for you to realize you needed it." She checked her watch. "Now go. You have a call with Sustainable Home magazine in 20 minutes. They want to feature Greengrow in their summer issue." As I headed to my newly established office in the corner of the warehouse, a desk, chair, and privacy screen that hadn't existed that morning, I felt a complex mixture of emotions: gratitude, humility, and a lingering sense of guilt that I hadn't involved my family sooner. The call with Sustainable Home went remarkably well. Without the weight of operational chaos crushing me, I was able to articulate Greengrow's vision with clarity and enthusiasm. The editor seemed particularly interested in the family collaboration angle, which now felt more authentic than ever. "Your timing is perfect," she said as we wrapped up. "Our readers are increasingly interested in family-owned sustainable businesses. There's something genuine about them that resonates with consumers tired of corporate greenwashing." After the call, I walked through the warehouse, observing the hum of activity that had replaced my solitary struggle. In one corner, Carlos was training 2 new production assistants, local college students with flexible schedules, on the assembly process he had redesigned for efficiency. In another, my cousin Sophia was photographing new product arrangements for social media achieving in minutes what would have taken me hours of frustrated attempts. By week's end, we had cleared the order backlog, doubled our production capacity, expanded our retail presence to 3 new stores, and laid the groundwork for sustainable growth. The family reconvened on Sunday as planned, this time with data, metrics, and tangible results to celebrate. Orders fulfilled have increased by 215%, Carlos reported, projecting a graph that showed a sharp upward trajectory. Production costs have decreased by 22% due to bulk purchasing and process improvements. Customer satisfaction ratings are at 4.8 out of 5 stars, Lucia added. Response time to inquiries has decreased from 72 hours to under 4 hours. Each report painted a picture of transformation that seemed nothing short of miraculous to me. When it was my turn to speak, I found myself momentarily overcome with emotion. "I don't know how to thank you all," I began, my voice unsteady. "A week ago, I was drowning. Today, GreenGrow is stronger than I ever imagined it could be." My father, who had been relatively quiet throughout the meeting, cleared his throat. "When your mother and I came to this country, we had nothing but each other and a dream. Everyone told us our little restaurant would fail, that 2 immigrants with broken English and no business education couldn't succeed. But we had something the doubters didn't understand. Familia." He looked around the room, his eyes lingering on each family member. "This is how Vegas build things. Together, supporting each other, never letting pride get in the way of progress." He turned to me. "You started something beautiful, Hijo. Now let us help you make it magnificent." The weeks that followed settled into a new rhythm. With operations running smoothly under the family's collective management, I was able to focus on what I did best: innovation and growth strategy. I developed 3 new product lines, established partnerships with sustainable materials suppliers, and refined our brand identity to emphasize the family heritage that had become integral to our story. Elena, recognizing her aptitude for operational leadership, reduced her hours at her consulting job to serve as GreenGrow's chief operating officer. Carlos, energized by the engineering challenges of scaling production, took a sabbatical from his tech company to oversee manufacturing full-time. Other family members found roles that matched their skills and availability, creating a flexible but reliable workforce that expanded and contracted as needed. 3 months after the urban lifestyle feature, GreenGrow had evolved from my garage-based side hustle to a legitimate small business with 14 part-time employees, a 3,000-square-foot warehouse, and distribution in 27 retail locations across 3 states. Our direct-to-consumer online sales had stabilized at roughly 5 times their pre-feature levels, and we were fielding partnership inquiries from national chains. But the most significant transformation wasn't reflected in sales figures or production metrics. It was in the way GreenGrow had become a vessel for my family's collective talents and aspirations. What began as my personal dream had evolved into a shared vision, one enriched by each contributor's unique perspective. This evolution wasn't without growing pains. Family dynamics occasionally complicated business decisions. My father's traditional approach sometimes clashed with Elena's MBA-influenced strategies. Carlos's perfectionism delayed product launches that marketing had already announced, and I sometimes struggled to relinquish control over aspects of the business I had previously managed alone. These tensions came to a head during a heated discussion about expansion timing. Elena wanted to aggressively pursue nationwide distribution through a major eco-friendly retail chain that had approached us. My father advocated for slower, more careful growth. Carlos worried about maintaining quality with dramatically increased production volumes. I found myself caught between exciting opportunities and legitimate concerns. The debate had reached an impasse when my mother, who rarely inserted herself into business strategy discussions, quietly spoke up. "Perhaps we should ask ourselves what kind of company we want to be, not just how big we want to grow," she suggested. "When I make my special mole sauce, I can make a small batch that's perfect, or a large batch that's merely good. But with the right preparation and patience, I can make a large batch that's still perfect. It just requires more planning and the right help. Her culinary metaphor cut through the complexity, reminding us that our choices weren't simply about logistics, but about values. Did we want to be a company that prioritized growth at all costs, or one that maintained the quality and sustainability principles that defined our brand? That evening, we crafted what Elena formally documented as the Green Grow Family Compact, a set of guiding principles that would inform our decisions moving forward. We committed to growth that never compromised product quality, sustainability practices that went beyond marketing claims, fair compensation for all contributors, family, or otherwise, and business practices that honored our family's heritage. With these principles established, the path forward became clearer. We would pursue the retail partnership, but with a phased approach that allowed us to scale production methodically. We would invest in better equipment and training rather than cutting corners to meet demand. And we would continue making decisions collectively, respecting the wisdom each family member brought to the table. The compact became our North Star during the whirlwind of growth that followed. As summer transitioned to fall, Green Grow expanded into the retailer's test market of 50 stores. Holiday orders began pouring in. Our team grew to include 30, part-time and 5 full-time staff. We outgrew Miguel's warehouse and leased a larger facility closer to our primary shipping partners. One crisp October evening, almost a year to the day after I'd started assembling the first Green Grow kits in my apartment, I found myself standing in our new facility after hours. The production floor was quiet, the machinery still. Shelves that had been empty that morning were now stocked with tomorrow's shipments. Hundreds of plant kits that would soon be making homes greener and air cleaner across the country. I walked through the space, running my fingers along workbenches and equipment that hadn't existed in my wildest dreams a year ago. On the wall of the break room hung framed copies of our media features, alongside family photos from production parties and celebration dinners. The office Elena had established for herself was meticulous, with color-coded files and precisely arranged office supplies. Carlos's workshop area was a contrast of creative chaos, with prototype designs and material samples organized in a system only he could comprehend. In the center of it all, I had insisted on maintaining a small greenhouse area where I could still experiment with new plant varieties and growing techniques, my creative sanctuary amid the increasingly complex business operations. As I surveyed what we had built together, my phone buzzed with a text from Elena. "Big news. Call me ASAP." I dialed her immediately. "Whole Earth Retailers wants to meet," she said without preamble. Their sustainability director saw our display in Eco Living's Phoenix location. They're interested in a possible national rollout for spring. Whole Earth was the largest eco-conscious retail chain in the country, with over 300 locations. A partnership with them would catapult Green Grow into an entirely new echelon of business. "That's incredible," I managed, my mind racing through implications. "When's the meeting?" "Next Tuesday. Their headquarters in Seattle. They want to meet the founder in person." She paused. "This is it, Marco. The big leagues." After we hung up, I sat in the quiet warehouse, overwhelmed by the trajectory of the past year. From a passion project born of environmental concern and family gardening traditions to the cusp of national distribution, it seemed simultaneously unbelievable and inevitable. I texted my parents, asking if they were still awake. 20 minutes. Later, I was sitting at their kitchen table, a cup of my mother's chamomile tea warming my hands as I shared Elena's news. "Seattle," my father mused. "That's a long way from where we started." My mother reached across the table and took my hand. "Your grandfather would be so proud. He always said plants were the bridge between people and the planet." She smiled. "Though I don't think he imagined his gardening lessons would lead to all this." "I'm nervous," I admitted. "This kind of growth, it changes businesses. I've seen it happen. Companies start with the best intentions, then compromise their values as they scale." I took a deep breath. I don't want to lose what makes Green Grow special. My father nodded thoughtfully. When we expanded the restaurant from 1 location to 3, many people warned us the food would suffer, that we couldn't maintain quality. You know what we did? What? We closed on Mondays. Everyone said we were crazy to give up a day of business, but we used that day to test recipes, train staff, and ensure everything met our standards. We made less money in the short term, but preserved what mattered most. He leaned forward. Find your Monday, Marco, the non-negotiable space you protect to keep your vision pure. As I drove home that night, my father's advice echoed in my mind. Find your Monday. It was exactly what I needed. Not a warning against growth, but a strategy for growing wisely. The Seattle meeting exceeded all expectations. The whole Earth team responded enthusiastically to our product line, our family story, and our genuine commitment to sustainability. What they hadn't anticipated was the comprehensive growth strategy Elena presented, the detailed production scaling plan Carlos had developed, or the community impact initiatives my mother had helped design. Most small vendors come to us with great products but no real plan for meeting national demand, their purchasing director commented. You've clearly done your homework. By meeting's end, we had a tentative agreement for a spring launch in 75 stores with potential expansion to all locations based on performance. The terms were favorable, the timeline ambitious but achievable. On the flight home, Elena worked furiously on implementation plans while I gazed out the window, watching clouds pass beneath us. I found myself thinking about my grandfather's small garden in Oaxaca, where he had taught me to nurture seeds into seedlings into plants. Nature knows the right pace, he would say. Too fast or too slow, and things don't grow properly. The art is in finding the rhythm. Green Grow had found its rhythm, a harmonious balance of family wisdom and business acumen, traditional values and innovative approaches. We were growing fast, but not too fast. Expanding thoughtfully, but not recklessly. The family compact guided our decisions, keeping us rooted in what mattered. As the plane began its descent, I turned to Elena. We need to find our Monday, I said. What? I explained my father's advice, and she nodded slowly, understanding immediately. Product development days, she suggested. 1 day each week where production continues, but you, Carlos, and the design team focus exclusively on innovation and quality control. No meetings, no emails, no distractions from the core work. And family dinners, I added. Sunday nights? Non-negotiable. No matter how busy we get, we discuss business for 1 hour maximum, then it's just family time. I like it, she agreed. I'll add both to the official calendar as recurring commitments. These protected spaces, our Mondays, became vital as Green Grow navigated the complexities of national expansion. The product development days ensured we continued to innovate rather than merely scaling existing products. The family dinners kept our relationships healthy and communication open, preventing business pressures from straining personal bonds. The Whole Earth launch in March exceeded everyone's projections. Our redesigned packaging, featuring photos of actual family members working with the products, resonated strongly with consumers. Social media buzzed with unboxing videos and time-lapse clips of Green Grow plants transforming spaces. Retail staff reported customers specifically asking for that family-owned plant kit brand. By summer, we had expanded to 200 Whole Earth locations and added 3 regional grocery chains to our distribution network. Our warehouse operated 2 shifts, employing over 60 people, many from my mother's community garden network and the surrounding neighborhood. We had established a nonprofit arm that provided free plant kits and gardening education to underserved schools. Green Grow had become something I never imagined that day in my apartment with soil-stained hands. And a simple idea. A mission-driven enterprise that created positive impact while providing livelihoods for dozens of families beyond my own. One particularly hectic Thursday in July, as I reviewed samples for a new drought-resistant plant collection, Carlos appeared in my office doorway. "You're needed in the conference room," he said with an unusual formality. "I'm in the middle of something," I replied, gesturing to the soil samples and seedlings spread across my desk. "Can it wait until after lunch?" "No, it really can't." Something in his tone made me look up. A barely suppressed smile played at the corners of his mouth. Intrigued, I followed him through the production floor to our modest conference room. When he opened the door, I was greeted by applause from a room full of family and staff. A banner hung on the wall. 100,000 homes greened and growing. Elena stepped forward, holding a framed chart showing our impact metrics since launch. "As of this morning," she announced, "Green Grow products have helped create over 100,000 new plant habitats in homes, offices, and schools across the country." She handed me the frame. "Congratulations, founder." I stared at the numbers, trying to comprehend the scale of what we'd accomplished. Each unit represented a small ecosystem, a tiny improvement in air quality, a connection between person and plant. Collectively, they represented a measurable environmental impact. My mother appeared at my side, pressing something into my palm. I opened my hand to find a small, worn bronze medallion, a St. Francis pendant my grandfather had always worn while gardening. "He would want you to have this now," she said softly, "to remember that even the greatest forests begin with single seeds." The celebration continued with cake and speeches, stories and laughter. I looked around at the faces. Family members who had become colleagues, employees who had become extended family, all united by a shared purpose that had grown far beyond my initial vision. Later that evening, alone in my office, I held my grandfather's medallion, feeling its weight, both physical and symbolic. I thought about all the decisions, both good and difficult, that had brought us to this milestone. The risks taken, the mistakes made and corrected, the moments of doubt overcome by collective determination. I thought about the next 100,000 homes and the 100,000 after that. The potential for growth seemed limitless, but only if we remained true to our founding principles. Quality over quantity, family over profit, sustainability in practice, not just marketing. I carefully placed the medallion in my desk drawer, next to the journal where I'd sketched the very first Green Grow kit design. Two artifacts from different eras of the same journey, one representing roots, the other wings. As I prepared to leave for the day, my phone buzzed with a text from Elena. "Bloomberg wants an interview. National business profile. You available Thursday?" I smiled, typing back, "As long as it doesn't interfere with product development day." Some things were negotiable. Our Mondays were not. The Bloomberg profile catapulted Green Grow into broader public awareness beyond the eco-conscious market we had initially targeted. The article, titled "Family Roots, Global Reach, the Green Grow Revolution," positioned us at the intersection of several trending business narratives: sustainable entrepreneurship, immigrant success stories, and the revival of family-owned enterprises in a corporate-dominated landscape. The reporter had spent a full day at our facility, observing operations and interviewing family members. She seemed particularly struck by our decision-making structure, how we balanced Elena's MBA-honed business acumen with my environmental vision, Carlos's engineering precision, and my parents' generational wisdom. In an era where family business often means nepotism and outdated practices, she wrote, Green Grow has reimagined the model as a strategic advantage, drawing on diverse perspectives within the Vega family to create nimble, values-driven growth. The profile generated interest from unexpected quarters. Investment firms began making inquiries about potential funding rounds. International distributors reached out about expansion opportunities. A major home improvement retailer expressed interest in creating Green Grow boutiques within their stores. These opportunities triggered our first significant family disagreement since establishing the compact. At our Sunday dinner, Elena presented a comprehensive growth strategy that incorporated many of these new possibilities. "We're at an inflection point," she explained, gesturing to her meticulously prepared slides. "With the right capital investment, we could triple our market presence within 18 months. Carlos nodded in agreement. "The production challenges are solvable. I've been modeling scalability, and with automation improvements and a second facility—" "Automation?" my father interrupted, his brow furrowing. "How many jobs would that eliminate?" "It's not about eliminating jobs," Carlos clarified. "It's about handling increased volume and reducing physical strain on our workers. We'd actually need more people, just for different tasks." My mother, who had been quietly listening, set down her fork. "And what about the investors? Would we maintain control of decisions?" Elena hesitated. "We'd have to accept some guidance from capital partners, but I've been careful to identify firms aligned with our values." "Values can change when profit margins are threatened," my father said, his voice carrying the weight of experience. "I've seen it happen too many times." I watched the conversation unfold, noting the tension building around the table. This was the most fundamental question we had faced: how to grow without losing our soul. The business student in me recognized the logical next steps Elena proposed. The environmentalist in me worried about compromise. The family member in me feared strain on our relationships. "What if," I said during a pause in the increasingly heated discussion, "we create a third option, not staying small and not traditional investor-backed expansion?" All eyes turned to me. "I've been thinking about what makes GreenGrow special," I continued. "It's not just our products or even our sustainability practices. It's the family model itself, how we've structured decision-making, how we prioritize values alongside profit, how we've created economic opportunities within our community." I leaned forward. What if that's actually our most scalable asset? Not just the plant kits, but the blueprint for how family businesses can thrive in the modern economy. Over the following hours, a new vision took shape. Rather than pursuing traditional expansion through investment capital, we would develop a cooperative network model. GreenGrow would establish regional production hubs in partnership with local family enterprises, providing them with our expertise, brand association, and distribution channels while they maintained operational independence within established quality guidelines. These partners would adapt GreenGrow's core products for their regional markets, incorporating locally appropriate plant varieties and materials while maintaining our sustainability standards. They would share in both the risk and reward, creating a distributed growth model that generated broader impact than we could achieve alone. "It's a franchise model, but with more autonomy and collaborative governance," Elena mused, already calculating potential financial structures. "Similar to how cooperative farms work, but for manufacturing and distribution. And technology makes this possible now in ways it wasn't before," Carlos added. "Cloud-based quality control systems, distributed inventory management, virtual training programs." My father nodded slowly, his initial resistance softening. "Like our extended family in Mexico. Different households, different specialties, but working together for common good." My mother smiled. "Exactly. Families supporting families. Growth, through connection rather than just expansion." By evening's end, we had outlined what Elena later formally documented as the GreenGrow Collaborative Network Strategy. Rather than pursuing rapid investor-backed growth, we would spend the next year developing a replicable operational model and identifying initial partner families in 3 test markets. This approach required more patience than traditional scaling, but aligned perfectly with our values. It would preserve the family-driven quality that differentiated our brand, while creating broader impact through a network of aligned enterprises. It would generate wealth not just for our family, but for many. The implementation proved more complex than we had initially envisioned. Creating systems that could be effectively transferred to partners while maintaining quality standards required months of documentation, testing, and refinement. Legal structures needed careful development to protect intellectual property while enabling true collaboration. Training programs had to be comprehensive yet adaptable to different regional contexts. Carlos immersed himself in the technological infrastructure, developing a proprietary platform that would connect network partners while protecting proprietary information. Elena focused on the financial and legal framework, ensuring the model would be sustainable and mutually beneficial. I concentrated on the environmental standards and product adaptability guidelines that would preserve our core mission across diverse implementations. Throughout this process, an unexpected development provided both validation and practical insight. Our existing employees began forming natural affinity groups that functioned like mini-families within the company. Production teams developed specialized knowledge and unique approaches to problem-solving. Distribution coordinators created their own communication systems. Customer service representatives established collective accountability practices. These organic developments illuminated how our family model could be adapted beyond blood relations. The values and decision-making approaches we had cultivated could indeed transfer to other contexts, given the right foundation and support. By spring, we were ready to pilot the collaborative network with our first partner, a family in Portland with horticultural experience and values alignment. We spent 2 intensive weeks training them in our systems, then supported them remotely as they established their operation. Within 3 months, they were profitably producing green grow products adapted for Pacific Northwest conditions, with plant varieties that thrived in the regional climate. Their success provided the proof of concept we needed. By year's end, we had onboarded 5 partner families in different regions, each bringing unique strengths to the network while maintaining the core green grow principles. Our collaborative platform facilitated knowledge sharing across partners, creating a vibrant community of practice that generated innovations we could never have developed alone. The Bloomberg reporter who had profiled us initially returned for a follow-up story, intrigued by our unconventional growth strategy. While competitors race to scale through traditional investment and centralized production, she wrote, GreenGrow is pioneering a distributed model that could represent the future of sustainable business growth, one that delivers economic benefits to multiple communities while maintaining the authentic, values-driven approach that consumers increasingly demand. 3 years after that first urban lifestyle feature that had nearly overwhelmed our fledgling operation, GreenGrow had evolved into a network of 12 partner facilities across North America, collectively serving over 800 retail locations and a thriving direct-to-consumer channel. Our product line had expanded to include specialized plant kits for various environments, educational materials, and a subscription service for seasonal updates. The warehouse where we had celebrated our 100,000 home milestone now served as both production facility and network headquarters, a hub of innovation, training, and collaboration. One wing housed the GreenGrow Academy, where partner families came for immersive training before launching their operations. Another contained our Research and Development Center, where botanists and engineers worked alongside community members to develop new sustainable growing solutions. On a warm September evening, we gathered for a network-wide celebration of our collective impact. 1 million homes greened, thousands of tons of carbon sequestered, hundreds of jobs created across partner facilities. The event connected all 12 locations via video, allowing the entire extended GreenGrow family to share in the milestone together. As I looked at the faces on the screens, diverse in age, ethnicity, and geography but united in purpose, I reflected on how far we had come from my solitary work in that apartment 5 years earlier. What began as a personal mission to make environmental action accessible had blossomed into an ecosystem of aligned enterprises, each rooted in family collaboration while connected to something larger. My grandfather's gardening wisdom had proven prophetic. Nature indeed knows the right pace. By resisting the pressure to grow faster than our values could sustain, we had created something more resilient and impactful than rapid expansion would have allowed. By finding our rhythm, our Mondays, we had preserved what mattered most while still reaching scale. After the formal celebration concluded and most participants had signed off, my immediate family remained on the call. Without discussion, we each raised a glass in silent acknowledgement of the journey we had traveled together. The struggles overcome, the lessons learned, the future still unfolding before us. No words were necessary. We were Vegas. We built things together. And what we had built was only beginning to grow.